You're watching Taste of Victory. Yes guys, it is already time to start getting ready for Booster Set 9 and it is so exciting. And if you want to buy any singles to build any of the decks on this list to get ready for Booster Set 9, please consider using my TCG player affiliate link in the description below. It introduces the new X antibody forms for a lot of Digimon, which is a very cool part of Digimon's history that I don't think gets enough recognition, so it's awesome to see it getting an entire set. And man, does it help out quite a bit of decks that got the support in this set. So we're going to go ahead, we see here we have a lot of decks to go through. Some of these we're just going to go through them really quick so we're not here all night, and then we're just going to go through really paying attention to the new guys and some of the top decks from old formats. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's mix it up, old and new, and see which decks are going to hold up and which decks are going to take over the meta. First up, let's start with MetalGarurumon X. This is a new deck being introduced in Booster Set 9 that basically is giving new support to old Garuru stuff that we had before. Booster Set 5 had a lot of Omnimon support, so Garurumon had a lot of support because of that set, and it's basically building upon that. You're kind of just trying to OTK at the level 5 level. It's your Garurumon with the old, or rather your WarGreymon, like the old promo and Garurumon X are synergizing together to keep getting a bunch of restands and swinging your opponent's security and using the new Garuru X as protection. So it's basically like a mid-range OTK deck, and you're kind of just using the MetalGarurumon as actually more like utility rather than the actual thing that's trying to be the win con of the game. It's really more like a level 5 deck. You kind of want to think of it almost like blue hybrids, where you're kind of just focusing on level 5s, and your level 6s are basically just techs for different matchups. It is really strong. Because of the new blue and red tamer in this set, it is also able to answer some of its worst matchups by teching in a delicate plan if you're scared about security control. So there's a lot of resources it could do. It could climb very efficiently. It can start attacking really early. I think this is one of the top best decks in the format, tier 1, and that may end up changing depending how people end up building security control in this set, because security control sadly is still going to be incredibly powerful if you're not a fan of it. So definitely you have to check all your lists with that in mind. That said, the deck does have a bit of consistency issues, just being a climb deck inherently, and then it doesn't have it has great matchups into a lot of the lower level decks, but into its fellow tier 1 decks, it only has even at absolute best matchups, which is going to hinder it a bit, so we'll see how far in tier 1 it ends up going. After that, we got fan favorite Armor Rush. It does get new support in this set with a new option and Magnamon X. Magnamon X is an amazingly powerful defensive tool, basically giving you a ton of block and redirection, and it's incredibly powerful, but unfortunately it still falls victim to a lot of the same problems Armor Rush currently has. That's saying, that being that security control is going to be popular and DP minusing is going to hurt it, and now even worse in this format, Digivolve is going to be pretty prevalent, as it's a really good answer to a lot of the strategies of a lot of the decks in this format that inherently hurts armors, because one of the best ways to get past Magnamon X, which is otherwise an annoying card, is to simply Digivolve it. That said, it is still really strong. I think this is probably going to end up the absolute top of tier 2, because as we're seeing here in BT8 and X2, where it's honestly a more favorable meta for it, it's still only about like tier 2, tier 1.5, and being that there's more hate and a faster aggressive meta in BT9, I think this is probably going to be the top of tier 2, not too low on it, but there's definitely going to be an argument, I think, for this going up to 1.5. It's just unfortunately a lot of the top meta decks have tools that absolutely hate on Armor Rush. After that, we got GrandisKuwagamon. This is basically GrandisKuwagamon X and everything but name. It's the same principle, but it's basically an OTK deck. You are trying to go for a bunch of swings, restand, and swing for game. You're also able to like target and redirect your attack to delete something. GrandisKuwagamon is a very OTK focused deck, but I think more so than all the other decks, because there's a lot of OTK introduced in Booster Set 9, but more so than those decks, GrandisKuwagamon is very piece reliant, which is why you even see some crazy stuff like Alice and Searcher tech into the deck for a bit more consistency and memory cost reduction. That said, there's a lot of pieces to it. Green is a color that traditionally does not have a lot of good drop power. It has drop power, but it's not very good. It's very conditional, so like it struggles to see its pieces, and once you're actually there, it's kind of fragile if you don't OTK that very same turn. And if you're just waiting to come out to finally OTK, other decks are probably going to do it a bit faster than you. So I think this ends up being a very solid tier 2 deck. Definitely something you could take wins with. This will absolutely, you know, it'll win like store championships and stuff. But I think it could like probably make it into a top 32 of regionals for sure. but it's not going to be like trailblazing, taking over the meta or anything enough to be tier 1 in my opinion, or even 1.5. After that, we're kind of moving on already to the hopes and dreams section. Here we got good old D-Brigade. It sticks around for a while. It won't get new support until X3 in Japan, whenever we get that. As it is, Rookie Rush is always going to be a fantastic strategy that inherently is able to outpace a lot of decks, so it's always going to be able to do something, but I do think this is just going to go in the hopes and dreams section because you're living on a prayer, basically. This is like all those decks live on, are the hopes and dreams of its loyal fan base. Definitely can put in work. I kind of want to be nice to it and put it into tier 3, but with a new Dexmon introducing the set, everything's going to be running at least one copy of it because it is so generic. And if you try to go wide, which is one of the main strategies of D-Brigade, you're just going to get answered by Dexmon, or you're going to get destroyed by Alphamon naturally. So it's kind of an uphill battle until we get new support. After that, we got an old guy that's still gonna. After that, we got a deck that saw a lot of resurgence towards the end of Booster Set 8 and X2, and that is Blue Hybrids. Blue Hybrids is still an amazing, fantastic deck. A lot of people, myself included, thought it would fall off, and it did initially while people were trying out the new cards, because people thought, you know, the new DNA Digivolution mechanic gets past your stun because you can just DNA, and the new Digimon does not come in stun, so it kind of negates this entire gimmick. But I mean, you know, stripping the sources is still really good because then your Imperialdramon is going to come out and play nothing out of its sources basically, and then you can always just stun the Jogress after they finish DNA Digivolving. So there's a lot of ways to tech this deck for the current meta, and it's still, I think it's still very efficient. Right now, I would put it at 1.5 in the X2 BT8 meta, but this is definitely going down. Because like the new option 2 is X antibody. This new option can straight up not be stripped. So this horrendously hurts this deck. There's some other decks that don't mind that you can't strip it as long as you strip the most important sources, but they need to be sourceless to be stunned in Blue Hybrid. So this is really tragic for the deck. Not every deck is going to be running it, and the best deck in the format, which is predicted to be Alphamon, doesn't even typically run it at more than 1 because it's so efficient with its own effects. But still, that's something to be worried about, so it definitely goes down. Honestly, that alone really makes me want to put this in tier 3, just because like your main entire strategy is countered by one option card now, because you literally can't stun things like that. Tommy's not gonna get rid of it or anything like that. But it's still incredibly efficient. The memory costs on these decks are just dumb efficient, super powerful to play through. You still have some good tools, and you can still stun other stuff because they're not always going to have the option effect. So while that is very tempting, I'm going to put it towards the bottom of tier 2 now, How the Mighty Have Fallen. After that, we get to a new deck introduced in Booster Set BT9, yet another one. This one is WarGreymon X. Building upon the ton of support we already have, WarGreymon X aims to be an OTK style deck with a bunch of huge DP to make sure your swings are safe, and if they're not safe, you have ADP just in case to protect yourself from any options. So this is an OTK deck that unfortunately cannot OTK as well as its counterpart in MetalGarurumon X. It's a bit more mid-range than MetalGarurumon X, but it's still at its core trying to be an OTK deck, which is why you usually see it paired with the Blitzomimon, which is why you usually see Hybrids ran in there, all the security plus Greymons. It does have great protection in the Greymon X, so like it said, even if it doesn't end up finishing it out, it is able to protect itself pretty well. So I think the problem with it is that it's pretty much outclassed by MetalGarurumon X, and MetalGarurumon X can tech for so much more situations and bad matchups than WarGreymon X can, just inherently because it's a red color, and red strategies are very linear typically. So just because of that, it's not a bad deck at all. It's still good, but it's going to go in 1.5 simply because it is already outclassed by its brethren in tier 1. After that, we have basically the same flavor in AncientGreymon OTK. This is definitely an evergreen deck because you are really not doing anything ever in terms of interacting with your opponent. You're kind of just hiding and raising, building your stack, digivolving those Alterous modes, and then once you have enough to OTK, once you draw your delicate plan or have a high enough DP or have that hybrid in your hand for game or Blitz Omni, whatever, you push out, you swing, and then you win that very same turn. Is basically what this deck is just kind of doing, unless you're running like Crimson Blaze and start answering your opponent's board. So it's an evergreen deck. I do think it'll still be really good into this format, just because like it kind of just plays solitaire and then comes out when it's ready because of the breeding area mechanic. So I think because of that, it's still a very solid deck regardless of the power level introduced in Booster Set 9. But I'm not too sure because other things are able to OTK. Like the other OTK decks are not coming up to the speed of AncientGreymon, so it's actually kind of gotten slow in comparison by the new OTK speed standard, because the game is picking up pace. So while this, I think you could probably put this in 1.5 previously if we were making an X2 meta tier list, but I think this is going to end up dropping down to tier 2 finally, and I think maybe a lot of people would have still put it at tier 2 anyways in this format regardless, because it's always going to be like a really solid list to be able to come out and just do its own thing if you high roll, you know? So I think that's pretty fair overall. After that, we go back to another fan favorite. This is an older deck, Mastemon. So Mastemon is really fun. It's been picking up a lot of steam towards the end of our X2 here, taking a lot of regional tops. There's a lot of pieces to it. You can build to help you buy time to see those pieces. However, it's a really hard to pilot deck, but it's really effective once you start getting all your effect off and comboing. Unfortunately, it does take a lot of setup, even if you can build towards stalling time, and then a lot of these decks have protection against your removal. You do have Tamer removal, which is really good, but you might just get OTK before then, even with threat and security, so I think this has gone down to tier 2 from where it used to previously be in the tier 1. A lot of people predicted it in Booster Set 8. After that, we move up to another deck that has been upgraded in Booster Set 9, and this guy is crazy. It's amazing to me how little play X Antibody ended up seeing in a current X2 BT8 format, but in BT9, we're going to see tons, because Alphamon Oryukin is just a ridiculous card that lets you keep extending your turn and just OTK. The cards Digivolving up there, you know, the X Antibody in line for Darugumon, Darugumon, all that stuff is just unbelievably efficient. Paired with Cool Boy, your average Digivolution is going to be giving you +2 memory basically, and then you're going to be drawing a bunch to help with your consistency, that is obviously a big problem X Antibody has now in a current Booster Set 8 format. So this does so much. It de-digivolves, it can toolbox its X Antibodies with its inheritable placing effect, making it a blocker, making it security attack +1, giving it a reboot. It does so much, so efficiently, so easily. This is easily tier 1, and as of right now is predicted to be the best deck. So that is taking into consideration the actual, you know, effects of the decks, placements in Japan, and our personal testing in multiple Discord servers. But as always, do not give too much weight to Japanese results, since that is best of 1. And as we've seen here, our meta usually ends up drastically different and weirder compared to theirs. So I don't think it's always the most accurate to take exclusively off of that. You have to do your own testing. You have to account for America's preference in deck building and a bunch of that. But the power level of this deck, like the effects printed on these cards, are ridiculously consistent and strong. So I think it's safe to predict this in tier 1 right now. After that, we got Titamon. This is a Hopes and Dreams, because you do have Hero, and then you're able to play a Delicate Plan to try and OTK, but it's just too many pieces. It's just not good. It's a pet deck. After that, we got another deck that is upgraded here. We got Gallantmon. So Gallantmon is kind of like WarGrey, except it is more control focused. That DP threshold deletion that we see in X2 is supported more with the X Antibody. You have bigger thresholds now. You have multiple effects in case one doesn't delete and stuff like that. So it's really good control deck now. A lot of good removal, pretty decent aggro still. But we have a lot of red decks that kind of just do what it does now, so I don't know if it will be outclassed by WarGreymon. I think WarGreymon kind of does I think WarGreymon kind of does a red strategy more effectively, so we're just going to go ahead and put this at the top of tier 2, because it is able to do stuff that WarGreymon doesn't have time to with controlling the board, but depending on your matchups, that won't be too much of a help, and you would rather have more consistent OTK. Next up, we got Beelstarmon. So Beelstarmon doesn't technically get anything new in this set, but towards the end of the meta we saw in Japan, it was taking a huge uptake in playability because people started tagging in blue and started running the option card Howling Crusher, because it is 7 cost, so Beelstarmon could play it. Previously, everyone agreed this card is absolutely awful because it is 7 just to strip all the sources of all of your opponent's Digimon. But if you play it for free in a format where a lot of decks depend heavily on their inheritable effects, it is actually pretty amazing because you get huge inheritable stacks with X Antibody, and a lot of its inheritables are incredibly important to the effects of its top end. So for free, you could trash everything on the field from X Antibody except maybe the option, I believe, the X Antibody option. But as mentioned previously, Alphamon X Antibody is actually one of the decks that runs the least lowest count of it because it is so efficient. Otherwise, it doesn't really need to see it. It doesn't need to digivolve up that fast. Its own effects do it for it, so it doesn't run it as much, so you don't mind it being still there. Because the more important ability is to get rid of all the other sources. So Beelstarmon having that niche to just instantly trash all the sources of the otherwise best deck in the format is really, really funny. I still think this doesn't take it up too high because you still have Set Control is going to be running around. They're probably going to be teching an Avenge Kid in North America. You can have a lot of variations of it that makes it really hard for Beelstarmon to compete, and it's going to be keeping it in check. So this is going to be somewhere between tier 2 and tier 1.5. I think depending on just how much we end up seeing of X Antibody and everything's an X antibody now. You got to be more specific of Alphamon, and how little we end up seeing of SecCon is going to determine its placement. So I think this deck could easily compete for a 1.5 slot, but I think for now it is going to be tier 2. After that, we got yellow hybrids, and I really do want to emphasize there's an important distinction between yellow hybrids and security control. Security control, you're going to be running way more options, and you're just going to be playing more for a deck out angle than you are with yellow hybrids, which does do some poking here and there, and doesn't have as traditionally many options as much as we've seen in X2 and BT8. They're really more focused on efficiency rather than just straight up options to be able to recover back up and DP minus your opponent's Digimon. So it's still a very good deck. Rapidmon is absolutely ridiculous, but there is a lot of more decks that have protection now. The thing is, a lot of that protection is not against DP minusing. So if you're able to DP minus your opponent's board with Cody and with Rapidmon, you're in a really good spot. I think yellow hybrids are incredible. Very efficient. They're still going to be an incredibly good deck, but I think security control is going to end up what people gravitate more towards when they want to play as a control deck. This is still going to be really good just by the inherent nature of control though, so I'm going to put this at 1.5 since you can tech to get out of the OTK range of a lot of these decks. Then we have Imperialdramon. This guy is running rampant in X2 and BT8. It's an amazingly great deck because it is so efficient. I'll just quickly OTK you, set up another board. If you get your board clear, you're running the mini build, you can maybe just build up a second stack again right away in security to keep pressure up without falling too far behind the momentum. So it's a really good deck. It's kind of similar idea to AncientGreymon OTK, where like it's just able to so quickly, efficiently, and without too much interaction with your opponents, build up an OTK strategy that I think it'll still be able to compete with these decks just because it's a pretty fast one and aggressive. So I'm going to put that in 1.5 towards the bottom of that. After that, we got Chaosdramon. Chaosdramon is getting a new support in X3. That's a while from now, though. Here in booster set BT9, it does get the new stuff from that machine, the cyborg machine archetype. I don't remember the name of any of the Digimon off the top of my head, but they were bosses in Digimon World 3, and they have the kind of like Gate Guardian form where they all fuse together. I believe that was Raidenmon. It was Raidenmon. So it's kind of technically support for the deck that Machinedramon could put it in there if it wanted to, but it doesn't really do anything. I don't think those cards themselves are going to make their own deck that well either. I didn't end up putting it on the tier list because I think it's just even beyond hopes and dreams. But this is just a pet deck. Even with like the accidental support that it gets in the set, it doesn't do enough for it. I think that's a little harsh because you can also build up blockers and stuff like that. I think maybe this will be our first tier 3. I think bottom of tier 3 because like you are able to do something with the new option at the very least, because you do also have that new option that lets them get rush and blitz. So you can probably steal some wins more consistently than these bottom decks can. So sure, let's go with bottom of tier 3. No, that's really unfair to D-Brigade then, because it's just such a, especially when you get just tech in the control aspect of it that a lot of people do. So we're gonna make a live change right now. Yeah, I think it's probably about equal power level then. After that, we got Lilithmon. So we have a loop strategy here. The loop is pretty much effectively gone. There's other things that you would want to loop now, like Juno loop in security control, where you just keep recycling Junomon, Avenge Kid, your Magamons and stuff like that. You keep looping that to eventually just deck out your opponents, or you know, be in the grind game long enough that you just poke away for game. So yeah, Lilithmon is kind of fallen off. I wouldn't even put this in tier 3 now. It's a hopes and dreams deck, because there's better things it does its gimmick. After that, we got Lord Nightmon. So this is something that was seeing some experimental play towards the end of X2 with Sakuyamon. I don't believe this gets anything specific in BT9. I think in BT10 it gets some new stuff that helps it out. It's an okay deck, but it is very piece reliant, incredibly piece reliant. And unfortunately, in X2, BT8, you had a bit of time to be able to get those pieces and cycle for it. But in BT9, everything is so fast and it's able to answer your wide board so easily that this really falls down, in my opinion, to hopes and dreams tier, unfortunately. After that, we got Jessamon. You have Chimeramon to kind of make up for it, but it's really bad with only the one Saviormon being your best option until we get the new starter decks. And I'm not even sure when we're getting the starter decks, because I know we're not getting them with the start of BT9, but until we get those, this is going to be at the hopes and dreams tier. But since I do believe we should be getting them at least while BT9 is out, we can maybe suggest that with starter decks, this could end up in tier 3, because that's pretty okay with the starter decks. After that, we got the bonds. The bonds just don't do anything that other decks don't already do, better and faster. So unfortunately, these are all going to go into Hopes and Dreams tier. They work best as a tech. And then, yeah, Eosmon is just not a good card. It is beyond slow and beyond gimmicky. It can't do anything in this format. And then surprised to see here, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about this, why is Whamon even on here? So Whamon actually does get new support in the form of the new Piranhamon cards. We got Piranhamon and Metal Piranhamon, I think is the card. But basically it's another top end for that play from your source to strategy, which can technically fit into Whamon as your alternate level 5 and level 6s. So you have more abilities to play out and stuff like that. So it does help it out a bit there, but unfortunately at the end of the day, that's not a huge boost with the new support. So this is still a pet deck in Hopes and Dreams. So we got Green Hybrids here. So Green Hybrids came out of nowhere doing a surprise showing, winning an Ultimate Cup, I believe it was, in X2 just recently. I think it was last week at the time of this recording. So this deck is very efficient, you know, it has a lot of memory gaining effects, it has ability to trash security, so it's very efficient in what it does, and it has a good answer to scary security in this format. So I think just because of that speed and that potential power level to just plow through security, sometimes even safely since you get to discard one, I think this is honestly a pretty decent tier 3 deck. I don't believe it'll be able to keep up with the other stuff, and I do believe it goes in tier 3. It's more piece reliant than the other hybrid decks, and even while it is more efficient with its memory gain, it is still pretty high rolly in what it wants to see, so that's kind of just gonna have to go there in tier 3 in my opinion. Then we have Cherubimon. Cherubimon does have some hope just by being an aggressive deck, but Dexmon just comes out and completely slaughters any hopes of strategy it had left. So that's going to be down in the Hopes and Dreams section. Then we got Shivamon, no need to mention that here. Here I messed up on the tier list. We have Black WarGreymon and Gaiomon. This is just a mistake. This is literally going to be the same deck. They're pretty good. Gaiomon is really great support by letting it be more aggressive and defensive by giving it reboot, and being treated also as a Greymon triggers all of its blocker effects at the lower level, triggers all of its DP boosting off of the rookies and stuff like that. So it's a really great top end boost to the Black WarGreymon deck. Unfortunately, I do think it's still going to be pretty low down there in terms of consistency, just because a lot of other decks aren't going to be minding losing their tamers too fast and too often, and then you also don't have as good OTK potential as other decks. It doesn't do mid-range control as well as Gallantmon can do, so I think this is kind of just top of tier 3 for now. After that, we got Leomon with the new Leomon Tribal, because we have 2 new Leomon cards in this, which is Pangeamon. I know I'm slaughtering the name. It might be Panyamon X and Leomon X Antibody. So these new cards are support for the Leomon strategies. They basically play stuff out when they are deleted. They play out other Leomons, giving you momentum. This is really nice, and I think it's a lot better than most of the stuff in tier Hopes and Dreams. But it's still like pretty low aggression. You're kind of just running off of recycling and efficiency with this deck. It's not too aggro, so I'm gonna have to put this in tier 3. After that, we got Ordainmon. So this is interesting because it is a level 7 Jogress before we get the RagnaLoardmon starter deck. Basically what this deck is, it's really crazy board clear effect, but it's all the way up at a level 7 DNA Digivolution. So you have to spend a lot of resources to be able to build into this thing, and then hope you don't get cleared anywhere along the way or afterwards if your opponent has no good way to come back. You're kind of just preying on it. This deck is way too slow, and while it does have a good payoff, it is just not built for this format. It is just too slow. I do think this at the very least is a decent enough tier 3 deck. However, it's better than the stuff in Hopes and Dreams because it has a more reliable strategy at the very least. Then we got Diaboromon, really cool guy, just beyond slaughtered in this format. There is no hope for this thing because it's just way too slow. And that deck needs a complete reset at this point to be able to keep up with how fast things have gotten, unfortunately. After that, we got Security Control. So Security Control is going to be our another top deck in 1.0 because this is amazing. There's tons of ways you can build it by Booster Set 9. You have a yellow-purple format, which you have a yellow-purple version which just loops the Junomon, your Avenge Kids and stuff like that with Hell Scythe and Calling from Darkness and all that stuff, so you can just keep looping stuff to outdeck your opponent, recover out of lethal range. You have red and yellow version, which offers a lot of unconditional destruction to set back your opponent, and you have, which probably I've heard is going to be the more popular version, yellow-black, because again, D-Digivolve is really strong in this format since you're spending a lot of resources to get into your top end, and a lot of decks fold hoping to just sit on their top end, like Magnamon X. Armors needs that to stick on the field, or they just wasted their entire turn. So being able to just very cost efficiently and easily remove stuff through Digivolution is huge for security control. So while we do have a lot of ways to stop it, you know, with red, ADP, and some effects to turn off security options, it's still just so momentum. Your opponent isn't always going to see those options and effects that turn off your security. So it's just going to be so terrifying to swing into security on average. And when you do, it's going to be devastating. You're able to poke away in the meantime, and if not, you can just deck them out. So that is why security control is going to be up there in the top 3 of this format. And I do think there is no one clear best deck just yet either. That's why there's no tier 0 or anything like that on this, or tier S or anything like that on this tier list. But that can absolutely change as the meta develops, since this is just a predictions tier list based off of a lot of different sources. So yeah, just a reminder, this Black WarGreymon is basically the exact same thing as a Gallantmon. That was just a mistake. I completely forgot to get rid of Black WarGreymon because it's basically the exact same deck. So these take just the exact same placement basically. But that is going to be the tier list. I'm pretty happy with this. Do not quote me on that because North America is full of crazy people building the most wild decks. And we're probably going to see something pop up that didn't even have play in Japan pop up here in North America and completely turn this list on its head. So we'll have to wait and see what that's like. But I am open to being wrong. I am very happy to see how North America's meta develops, and if it's different from this, that'll be really cool because I love seeing Dark Horse decks come out of nowhere and become a really big meta contender. So yeah, everything tier 1.5 is like almost so close to being good, but it's just out of there. And I think everything in tier 2 is more than capable of winning regionals, winning ultimate cups and stuff like that. So, you know, definitely do not be discouraged of playing these. And even your tier 3 decks, you can definitely take some wins with them, and you should never be discouraged from a tier list of playing your favorite decks. Play what feels best to you, because you always follow your heart when it comes to a competitive game, because if you're not enjoying yourself, your play is going to reflect it. So don't put too much stock into the tier list and find what works for you. This was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it too. Let's see how accurate this ends up being. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.